Good morning and welcome to Casablanca. My name is Caroline and I'm going to be travelling around this gorgeous country of Morocco for the next couple of weeks with my other half Andy. This morning we've come along to the Grand Hassan II Mosque and everything's just gone a little bit unexpectedly. We were under the impression that you could only take still photographs inside whilst on a tour, but when it got to the end of our tour, our guide explained that now that the tour is over, we are more than welcome to take as many videos and sound recordings as what we wanted to inside. So we're going to rewind to a couple of hours ago and let me take you on a tour inside the mosque. This is underground. We've had to come down a huge staircase to get here. It's the room where people will wash before they go to pray. Behind me is a fountain, and out of the centre water comes out, but they were cut into marble, so channels that the water then runs down so that people can be able to catch the water. And there's certain parts of the body that gets washed 3 times over, and then there's certain parts that will only get washed once. She was also explaining that because it's clean water that comes out of these fountains in the middle are only used when it's busy. So for example, on a Friday prayer day or during Ramadan. But on other days of the week, people will actually use the taps around the very edge of this room in order to be able to conserve that water. So it's one of those things where if you ask, sometimes you get. I'm really pleased that I asked our guide if it was possible to do some filming after the tour, and she also said that it was okay for us to have a wander around and look around ourselves. And so I've come back up, and just as I was taking off my shoes to get back out into this carpeted area, the last tour group's gone and it's just me, and there's one person right at the other end with a vacuum cleaner just cleaning up. One of the things that our guides explained is that all of the people who work here, their wages are covered by the tour cost of all of the different tour groups that come in. So that's really cool that it's not the locals that are needing to foot that bill. A few of the other things that she went over was talking about how almost everything that's in here is all Moroccan made. So things like the wood has all been carved here in Morocco. The marble on the non-carpeted sections has come from the southern parts of Morocco. And there's only tidbits such as like a little bit of marble that I think is like on some pillars at I want to say it's the end where you're facing towards Mecca. So from Morocco, it would make sense that it's facing east. That's come from Italy. And then you've also got the roof, and she was explaining that you can see a line between the 2 sections of wood, and that's because the roof completely retracts. So during things like Ramadan, when this mosque is completely full with 25,000 people, I want to say, I'm almost certain she said that it was 20,000 men in this section here, and then upstairs there's another 5,000 women, and then outside in the courtyard area there's another 80,000 people that it can fit. It starts to get incredibly hot in here, so you can retract the roof and you get amazing daylight that comes in, and of course it also helps to keep it nice and cool for during prayer times. So behind me is the direction facing Mecca, so when people are praying, they'll be praying looking in the direction that is directly behind me. One of the other things that our guide pointed out is that you've got these gorgeous marble pillars, and if you follow those cylindrical pillars down, you get a box-like shape. And she said that those boxes are in fact speakers, as they're really well hidden into the architectural design, and you've got those sorts of speakers all the way throughout the entire mosque just because of its sheer size. It's needed. Honestly, if you are coming to Casablanca and you're planning on coming into this mosque, I'd strongly recommend doing the same thing. Just when your guide's finishing the tour and they ask if you've got any more questions, just ask for them for permission and just ask if it's possible to have a bit of a wander around on your own. Because she said it was fine, and I've passed a couple of members of staff and I've just said salam alaikum and smiled, and I think they're quite chuffed that I can say that even though I'm English. And yeah, everyone's just happy me wandering around. So I'm not too sure if somehow I've been given permission to come in here and Andy hasn't, because he hasn't followed me up. He was just taking a few photographs. So I was hoping to go and find the park, because I've heard that in this mosque there are some glass windows in the floor that actually overlook the ocean, because this mosque is right out on the very edge of it, and I think that there's a part of it that actually overhangs it. But unfortunately the only glass windows in the floor that I've been able to find look down into the room where people go to wash, which is what we were in a little bit earlier on. And I think just because of now being apart from Andy for a little while, I feel a bit bad going on any more of an exploration. So I think maybe just one for the internet to try and find out later. The vestibule area that I exited through was actually underneath the minaret, and there were a couple of pillars on either side of the grand staircase taking you down to the washing area. And one of them, the architect, had been very clever in disguising an elevator inside of it. It was explained to us that it's an elevator just to be used by the males, and at the time I wasn't really too sure where that elevator would take you, because I was aware that the women were people who pray upstairs. But obviously after having come out, realising that that area is underneath the minaret, it must be an elevator that takes you up to the very top of it. And what I have learned is that these days there's a already pre-recorded call to prayer, and you've got speakers that are at the top, but historically you used to have someone who would actually climb to the very top of those minarets in order to be able to do the call to prayer for all of the locals to hear and know that they needed to come to the mosque. Thankfully we heeded the advice of what lots of people had suggested online, which wasn't to rock up just before 9 o'clock in the morning, which is when our tour was, and in fact to get there with quite a bit of time to spare, because when we got to this intersection we just kept on going down the road thinking that it was the mosque that we were headed to, but in fact what we needed to do was turn down this road here, because there's a huge complex and then the ticket office is at the front, and then you walk across that huge courtyard to actually get to the mosque. So I just recommend either follow this advice of turning here, or alternatively just get there with plenty of time to spare. I think there were a couple of latecomers who then joined our tour a little way into it, so that would be the other thing you obviously would just end up missing out, that's all. One of the things that I'd read up on is that back in 1987, when this mosque was given the go-ahead and construction began, a lot of the people who lived in Casablanca were very opposed to it because of the sheer cost that it was going to come to basically the taxpayers of having to fund it. And what's interesting is that we're now trying to walk back because we're about to start a food tour, and we seem to have come through what I suppose is kind of known as a shanty town, but I think it's called a bidonville, and it just kind of gives that juxtaposition of the great wealth and the huge amounts of money that it cost to build that mosque, and then walking through an area like this. It turns out that these days actually people who live in Casablanca are really quite proud of the mosque, and I think it's been quickly forgotten as to just how much money the locals had to spend funding it. So whilst I mentioned the food tour a moment ago, we were let down by the company, so in next week's vlog it will be a bunch of footage that happened both before and after this mosque visit. We'll put together our own DIY foodie tour, rubbing shoulders with locals in the markets, including ones where the food is still alive, all the way through to modern establishments, those that are a little bit touristy but still worth it, through to street food eats. Despite the tour being cancelled at the 11th hour, what we did instead turned out to give us some of our most favourite moments from the entire trip, so we'll hope that you'll join us for it.